Everyone to the Dad Cartel podcast. I'm excited to bring you guys conversations with great dads from across the country. Please follow the Dad Cartel on YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok if you found value in this episode. And please share it with other dads to help us create a great dad culture. If you're interested in participating as a guest, send me a DM on any of the social platforms or email me at prouddad@dadcartel.com. Today I'm joined by Victor. Hey, Victor.
Hey, what's up, man? How you doing? Happy Saturday.
Yeah, man. It's we're on the eve of the 4th of July, so it's a good weekend, right? I don't know about you, but I have an extended weekend and it's nice to get a few extra days off.
Yeah, I don't, which is really funny, but
Oh man.
the family has some plans, and which I'm really excited for them because I love when they all get together.
Yeah.
I'm a pop in and jump back out to get to work real quick as always, but whatever, as long as they're
Yeah.
they're happy, I'm happy.
That's that's awesome, right? Yeah, that's all that matters, right? Grilling and spending time with the family and hanging out and celebrating the freedom, right? I see the US Army plaque in the back. So are you a vet?
No, I'm actually not. My wife is currently serving.
Oh, awesome. Awesome. Well, tell
Hmm
her thank you
hmm
on behalf of me, Dad Cartel, and all the audience. Definitely appreciate that.
Thank you for support. Thank you, man.
Yeah, awesome. So tell me about yourself, man. Tell me your journey about becoming a dad. How did that happen for you, and what's it been like for you?
um, man, you know, it, as raw and real as it can be, man, becoming a dad saved my life. Um,
Mm.
I was very fortunate to become a father in a couple different forms, and I say that because when I first started dating my wife, she had a son. He was about one and a half,
Mhm.
1.5, 2, and at the time I was so lost, man, like just so lost, and just no purpose, just you know on doing not living a good life, not living an honest life,
Yeah.
not living a life that had any future in it. And
Mhm.
when I started pursuing a relationship, anything, a conversation with my wife, she told me straight up, she's like, hey, I need you to understand, like, I'm a mom, like, I'm a mother first
Mhm.
before anything. And
Yeah.
she's like, I don't have time to date. I don't make time to this and that. This is my son's my life. She's like, so, you need to
Yeah.
understand that what you're kind of getting into. And
Mhm.
to this day, the one thing that I will always credit and really just hype up my wife for is that she never told me to change. You know what I'm saying? She was like, hey,
Mhm.
listen, this is where I'm at. This is what I'm doing. Figure it out. You know
Yeah.
and in that moment, bro, in that moment, I got clean. I got, I was living on couches.
Yeah.
uh like I said, I was just trying to find some type of grasp on life, on being a man, right, on being a man,
Yeah.
to be that for her.
Mhm.
She was very fortunate, had a
Yeah.
great father that was there and that showed her what it
Mhm.
was to be a man. I didn't have one, so
Yeah.
I was just kind of trying to figure it out. And we she I tease her till this day, man, but she gave me a shot, and I call her
Yeah.
crazy every day for it, but she gave me a shot, and I really turned my life around, bro. I really did. A year
Yeah.
into it, we moved in together. My oldest was 3 at the time, and I say that I became a father in a few different ways because, I guess the coin is bonus dad now, but you
Yeah.
ask me, you ask him, he's 13, he's 13 now, and I mean, I'm dad.
Mhm.
I'm dad,
Yeah.
and then we're very fortunate. And 6 years later, once we had a strong, no, it was about three years later, we had a strong bond, and we were good. We were in such a healthy place. And the good Lord blessed us with another one. And then I got to
Oh, that's
feel.
awesome.
It's funny because I met him when he was 2. And we had our first son, or we had our next son at 6, when he was 6. So in my head, I'm like, oh, I've been a dad for like 4 years. I got this. You know what I mean? Like, I know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Like, no, bro. Like that pregnancy to newborn phase, like that's when you earn your stripes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's when they
Yeah.
talk about the sleepless nights and the and the crying and the diapers and the change. Because at 2, my
Yeah.
oldest, he's really smart. He's really communicative. So even at 2, 3, he could essentially still like kind of communicate like what he needed or what he wanted, diaper change, hungry, whatever.
Yeah.
I'm holding a newborn. Like, what is going on? And so
Yeah.
that was a whole. So I always say like, my 3 loves. Liam, my oldest was acceptance, right? I had to earn his
Mhm.
acceptance before
Yeah.
our relationship of father son really started. You know what I mean? With Grace,
Yeah.
with my middle son, it was instant. It was, oh my God, this is what they talk about. This is that feeling of like, oh, you just look at this baby. And then when my youngest, when
Mhm.
my daughter, I knew in that moment that when I held my daughter, I was done. I
Game
knew
over,
in that
right?
moment that
Yeah.
yeah, dude, when I held my daughter, I knew like she is gonna get everything that she wants. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
I was very fortunate. I was very blessed in this journey to experience those different because and for all the fathers that have multiple kids, like it's different. You know what I mean? Like the who's your
Mhm.
favorite? It's like it's no, there none of them's your favorite. It's just it's different. Every love and every journey that you have with each individual one is just it's different. So I'm very lucky in that,
Mhm.
and I really appreciate that
Yeah.
I was able to experience that.
Yeah, that's a hell of a story, man. I love that, right? You were just kind of going about life and trying to figure things out, and there was no sense of urgency, right? I could totally relate to that because when I got with my wife, same thing. I was, this person that I was improving and I was going through school and I got degrees and things like that, and kind of like meandering through life, it felt like, and not really in any meaningful direction or any meaningful way. And then just meeting her and her coming from a strong family and just her kind of having a game plan for like, this is what I want in life. And that involved kids. And at the point where we had met, I wasn't sure if I wanted kids. I grew up in a way similar to you where my dad he wasn't around, he was in and out of my life, and it was just really hard to kind of fathom the idea of, do I want to do this to someone else? Or that's kind of how I thought about it, right? Do I want to like put someone else through what I went through? And being with her really changed my mind because I started thinking, well, doesn't have to be that way, right? It can be different. It can be, I can create that change. And maybe life with kids would be great with her, right? And that's when I started, that ball started kind of rolling. And in a similar way with you, man, I felt like she kind of saved me from myself of like, I was drinking, I was doing a bunch of just unconstructive shit that was just kind of not helping me in any kind of way. And when we started kind of just living together and kind of moving on and being more serious, that's when this things started to change. And eventually I completely changed my mind of I want kids, and now I want a big family, and and now we have a daughter, and it's amazing, right? So similar to you,
Yeah.
she just you know just when I saw her, I'm like, you're getting everything you want. Like, I knew that was going to happen, but
Yeah.
you see her and you're just like
Yeah,
I,
man.
I don't have a shot. Like, I'm not going to be able to discipline you. Like, I am, but I'm not going to be the one that spanks you. I told my wife that, I'm like, I'm not
Sure.
spanking her. Like, that's your duty. I have a
Yeah.
stern face, and that's it. But yeah, man, I love hearing stories like that. It's amazing when someone can find another person that really changes their life in such a meaningful and impactful way.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's amazing.
It's the timing of this is funny because my oldest and I, we had to have again, he's 13, he's going through those teenage, just ups and downs. And if there's one
Yeah,
thing that I try and really like show them more than anything, I always refer to this quote from Matthew McConaughey, who like was just one of my favorite actors, and he says the greatest gift I
yeah,
can give my children is showing them how much I love their mother. You know,
yeah,
and I try to make them understand how important, especially as men, right? Especially as young men, like how important it is
mm,
to find that right partner, right? Like, as you just said, like
yep,
your wife helped you become who you are today, right? And
Hmm.
that's a very similar situation with us. Like my wife is my world, you know,
Yeah.
and I need and want them to understand that, so they know the importance of a healthy relationship, and they know the importance
Mhm.
of like the respect that we have for each other, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, it's always talked about, right, that men are the example for their daughters of what they'll look for in a partner. But I think
Hmm.
also from the other perspective, right, when the boys see the father and how they treats the mother and like the relationship they have, all the little intangibles that most people might miss, right? Like getting her flowers every week or every other week, opening doors, things like that. They go such a long way. And those are the little life lessons that people don't realize that kids pick up on, right? And they pick up on it on their own. They're not, you don't have to tell them. They'll see it and it becomes kind of second nature to them, right? They'll see, oh, well, dad always opens the door for mom. And, that's what a gentleman does for a woman, right? And they'll pick that up and that becomes part of their habit. And, I heard that I was at a restaurant, I think, a couple months ago, and it was a great lesson. I overheard from another table where there was a dad that was with his family and a couple of kids, and the waitress brought over, I think, silverware or something like that, and the kid didn't say thank you. And so he's like, "Say thank you." And then so he's like, "Oh yeah, I forgot, sorry." And so he tells his son, "Well, if you say it all the time, it's going to become second habit and it's going to become second nature and it's going to become a habit and you won't even remember and you won't even have to think about it." And I love that because it's true. Like it's just reinforcing good habits and it's going to pay off in the end. Makes you a better person.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And why not? You know, why not want to be a courteous person, right? Like, why not just want to be, you know, well mannered?
Yeah. No, yeah, it goes such a long way. So, tell me, who was a dad role model for you? I always talk about this with the guests, but there's different ways to become a good dad, right? Whether it's someone that you know personally, like your own dad, or a neighbor, or an uncle, or sometimes it's TV dads, right? Who was that dad role model for you?
You know, man, I was waiting for this question. I've obviously I've listened to some of your some of your prior podcasts, and I was watching some of the
Yeah.
shows, and I know that pardon me, this question comes up, and
Mhm.
I was like trying to be ready for it, you know, and
Yeah.
jokingly I
Yeah.
was gonna say Uncle Phil, right? Like, you know, right, you know, just off
Oh
the
man,
bat, you know,
hey,
er,
yeah,
right, for the older millennials, you know, Uncle
yeah,
Phil,
yeah, for sure.
you know, knee jerk reaction as a joke, but honestly, man, it was my mom. You know, it was my mom.
Yeah.
Like I had, you know,
Awesome.
again, kind of revisiting this, you know, this conversation my son and I had yesterday. You know, like I didn't have anybody, man. I didn't have any. Like I had
Hmm.
like you know, I had a, you know, my real dad wasn't involved. I had an abusive
Hmm.
stepdad, you know, for a few years. You know, my uncles were not the best. You know what I'm saying? They were doing
Yeah.
their dirt and it publicly. So as a you know as a teen as a kid as a boy that's easily influenced, like that was what I had to see. You know, my
Yeah.
mom is probably like the most wonderful person in the world. Anyone that meets her can
Yeah.
attest. And her mission in life was to be, this is what she would tell me. She goes, I am trying to show you how to be the husband and the man I never had. You know, and so
Awesome.
every single thing that she instilled in me as a boy growing up, you know, the provider, the protector, you know, the you know the North Star, you know, the you know
Hmm.
the boots on the ground, all those little things that, you know, she encompassed as what a real man should be, what she felt that
Yeah.
you know, she would have wanted in a relationship. You know, when my mom, when you know, it's two of us, my sister and I, and you know, when my dad left,
Mhm.
she devoted her life to me, you know, and
Yeah.
you know, somewhere down the line, she didn't, you know, she met my stepdad, and you know, at first, I guess it was okay, and then you know, here came my sister, so they try to make it work, but then when that didn't work out, again, she completely devoted her life to us as her children. So I
Yeah.
didn't. I was very fortunate that, you know, after the issues in the relationship and the you know and the back and forth with my stepdad, she's like, you know what, I'm not even gonna attempt this again. Like, let me just focus my life on my kids. So she
Yeah.
spent from that moment on, you know, trying to teach me how to become the best father possible not having one,
Hmm.
and teaching my sister like how to become a lady, how to become a respectable
Yeah.
woman. So we had that really reinforced at home, and it's real funny because we have a great relationship until this day. I'll text her, I'll call her, and I'll be like, dude, you're right, you were right,
Yeah.
like, and these little things that I
Yeah.
find myself doing, again, second nature, kind of going back to that conversation that you overheard at dinner, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's just instinct to me. I'm like, oh, this is how it has to be done.
Yeah.
Oh, this is what it is. Oh, you know what I mean? And so
Yeah.
I will always forever give full credit to the man that I am today, to my mom.
That's beautiful, man. It's again, it's her learning, I guess, from her own kind of experiences, right? And then passing that on to you. That's so powerful, being able to, pick up on the things of here's I may not have had the best, marriage or whatever it was, right? Partnership. And so now here's what I picked up that I would have appreciated as a wife, and I'm gonna pass that on to my son. That's amazing, man. I love that. There's a million ways to learn, right? And I always heard that expression of, the best way to learn is from other people's mistakes or other people's experiences because that costs you nothing, right? And
Right.
when someone's willing to pass that on, it takes a certain amount of, humility. It takes a certain amount of um I'd say like emotional intelligence too, because you have to sit there and reflect and
Absolutely.
dissect your own life, and it's difficult, right? Because you're sitting there and it's probably painful too, and you have to sit there and think, what would have I appreciated, right? Like being taken out on an anniversary, or all these little things that you have to kind of relive and then pass on. And I can relate to that too. My mom's the same way, right? Well, she'll catch me, and moms know best, man. I'm with you on that. Like moms
Right.
have known best about every like woman I've dated, and you name it, and they're
Oh
like
yeah.
99% of the time they're right. And it's like we just have to learn the hard way sometimes. Um, but I get those little lessons too. My mom saying like, "Don't forget to do this for your wife, and don't forget to do that." And it's it's so powerful hearing it from someone that you really respect and truly admire in that way. And shout out to moms, man. I can't say that enough.
Absolutely.
It's funny. I get some. I don't know if you looked at some of the comments and stuff I'll get on TikTok, but sometimes it's like, well, what about moms? And what about this? And moms do a big part too. I'm like, yeah, I know. I've never once said that moms aren't like the pillar and backbone of a family, but everything that I'm doing here with Dad Cartel and having guys like you on is trying to show the other side of it, right? Because dads are an important part of the equation, and I think that it's not talked about enough, and even it's being diminished, and that's more so why I started these conversations. But at no point are we ever saying like moms aren't important, and sometimes there'll be weird comments where it's like dads are better parents than moms, and this is why, and I'm like I don't agree with that. Like that's so general, and it's a case by case basis. You can say it that way, but yeah, it's interesting, man.
No, I absolutely agree with you, dude. And here's and this is what actually attracted me to this. I'd already been following you, I think, for some time. I've been watching some of your videos, and I can't remember if
Mm,
you posted it. Yeah, you had posted a video on TikTok, and that's what I had replied to. And I'm
mhm,
much like you, I'm on a crusade. You know what I'm saying? I'm very fortunate. I have a close knit, close group of dad friends out here, and we're all on the same page. You know what I'm saying? I was
mhm,
very fortunate. I'm one of the first one, like, in my friend group that had it, that had that became a father. And so now some of my other friends are
mhm,
that I grew up with, right, high school. Now they're becoming dads, and hey, bro, like,
yeah,
what do you like? How, freaking out, right? That intimidation, that fear, and once again, what
yeah,
really attracted me to this, and really wanted to jump on here was, you're absolutely right. Like, yes, mothers are celebrated, bro. Like, there's no taking away from them. I heard a quote yesterday from Jordan Peterson, and he says, we can never
mhm,
diminish or take away from the importance of a mother or a single parent, but in that same breath,
yeah,
you can't refute the science of a father in
yeah,
their children's life in any way, in some
yeah,
facet. And I feel like,
mhm,
without getting boo-hoo, don't get me wrong, guys get overlooked because,
yeah,
in a sense, that's how it was, right? Like, I was raised by,
yeah,
a immigrant mom, right? I'm a first generation American,
yeah,
and I can, the unfortunate and, you know generational traumas that we grew up with, that
Yeah.
they grew up with, in Mexico, right? Like, this is what a man is, this is what a man is. And I
Yeah.
tell people, we're in a very unique time, right? We, like, especially us older millennial dads that are living in this generation where we were raised by the old guard, right? Suck it up,
Yeah.
and man up and this and that. But then we also
Hmm.
now know the importance of mental health and talking about your feelings
Yeah.
and expressing how you feel. So it's almost like a back and forth, right? Where we need to make sure
Hmm.
that, yes, we're talking about how we feel, but at the same time we understand, hey, life's hard. We gotta buckle down sometimes. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
I feel like one of the best ways for men, especially because unfortunately, a man's not gonna volunteer. Most men won't volunteer their problems, their issues, because we're
Yeah.
almost taught that no one cares. So platforms like
Yeah.
this, channels like this, people like you out
Yeah.
there that are really just trying to put this information out there so other dads can know, understand, like, hey man, I'm not alone in this, is
Right.
extremely powerful. And once again, never to diminish the work and the blessings of mothers, but at the same time, let's also welcome and celebrate the importance of a father, right?
Yeah, yeah, 100%, man. I couldn't have said it better. It's really, it really has a lot to do with that, and it's, part of it for me was just dad's not only the acknowledgement piece I can live with, right? And with to your point, it's we're living in a time where it's like we have to, we know more and more, right? And we'd be stupid to not really factor in things like statistics, like the majority of suicides are by men, right? And that has a lot to do with mental health issues and men just bottling shit up, right? And I'm with you. We've come from that generation of it's like man up, like don't talk about how you feel. Like men aren't allowed to be stressed out. Men aren't allowed, like just deal with it. Go. The way that people coped with it was substance abuse, right? It's usually in the Mexican community. I'm Mexican too. Is drinking, right? Like don't worry about it. Go drink some beers and you'll be all right, like that kind of thing. But it's
Right.
really just you're masking all that pain and that stress, and it just amplifies and you keep bottling it up and it's going to explode at some point, right? And I can attest to it personally, right? Like whether it was my dad or seeing uncles or friends of like friends' dads and things like that. And that's where you get, the cranky dad that like blows up
Right.
for any reason and things like that. And
Right.
it gets amplified by like financial pressures and things like that. So it's this crazy, like vicious cycle that, you have all these issues that if you just talk to someone and even just kind of shooting the shit like this, right? And talking to someone else like, hey, this is what I'm
Absolutely.
going through. Have you experienced this? It goes such a long way, man. We don't need to do like big, like organized kind of like, oh, let's get
Right.
together every Tuesday at 7 o'clock and like we'll talk about our feelings. It doesn't have to be that, and that's that works too. But it can be as simple as like, hey man, I'm kind of going through this like with my kids, and like they're starting to talk back, and I don't know how to discipline them without like spanking them. Like what's worked for you, right? Like that goes such a long way, and learning from one another. It's like why aren't we tapping into the experiences of other people that have been through this.
Exactly. And I love how you put that, right? Like, you know, you can't attack, not attack, that's not the right word, but you can't kind of combat men's mental health the same that you can women's mental health, right? And
Mhm.
women tend to be more emotional, and like you said, like they
Yeah.
like to vocalize, they like to have that, girls night, whatever. And for guys, it's
Mhm.
almost a little bit simpler, personal
Mhm.
experience. A good friend of mine, great father. We were talking, and we train jujitsu, we train grappling and whatnot. And I asked him,
Nice.
hey man, how's training going? And he
Mhm.
goes, he's like, hey man, like I haven't been going, like I don't feel myself, like I just, first of
Yeah.
all, the comfort and the vulnerability to know that he could just even say that to me, right? And
Yeah.
knowing that I'm there, and sometimes just like, hey bro, what's up? Like what's going on? I didn't overlook
Mhm.
that. I didn't overshadow that. I was like, we kind of finished. I asked the question, this and that, and I was like, hey, but let's go back to this. Like, hey, what's going on? You all right? And he goes, yeah, man,
Yeah.
I'm just tired of XYZ. He told me, and he's like,
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't feel like I'm being the best father and husband I can be, you know? And
Yeah.
I could relate. I could relate.
Yeah.
2 months ago, I was literally in the same spot he was at. And I was like, bro, I
Yeah.
got you. I feel you. Listen, and I just try to give him like a little bit of words, right? A little bit of, hey, you're not alone.
Yeah.
I was in the same boat. And he even told me
Yeah.
2 days later, he called me. He goes, hey, bro, I don't think you understand. Like you didn't say much, but you said what I needed to hear. He goes, and I want to thank you. He goes,
Yeah.
sometimes it's good to know that I'm not alone.
Yeah.
And I thought that was super powerful. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. I can relate to that same kind of experience. So we're gonna get into jujitsu just because we have to now. I didn't realize you trained. I thought you
yeah,
did, but now we're gonna get into that.
yeah,
But no, I can
yeah.
relate to that, man. With some of my training partners, it's the same kind of thing. Sometimes you see these people so often that you know kind of their natural demeanor, right? They'll come in and there's different guys, right? I'm like the more introverted guy that like I'll have like one-on-one conversations with people, and then there's the other guys that are like just life of the room, right? That they're like, "Hey, what's up, man?" Shaking everyone's hand, like like that kind of person. And I had a similar experience with some of the like a guy that was like that, and he comes in, man, and he's just like head down, just kind of like no energy. And I'm just like, hey, man, what's up? And so I give him the opposite of what I usually, I'm not that usually like that, hey, like chipper kind of guy, more kind of like reserved, but I give him the energy he usually gives me. And then I could see like he kind of was like, oh, yeah, like kind of caught himself and just kind of just, shooting the shit. Hey, how's life? Like, what are you up to? How's work? And then, it was like some work stresses, I think, that he was kind of going through. And I'm giving him ideas, right? Like from my perspective, my professional perspective of like I do marketing, and I'm like, hey, like have you ever thought about this or so and so, and just kind of like kicking ideas around and validating some of the ideas that he had in his head. And I could tell that made like a big difference just in that little conversation, just being able to say like, it's natural what you're feeling, right? You're feeling pressure, you're feeling a million different pressures, probably financial, and like you're then it goes into like are you providing for your family, and like just a lot of snowball to kind of sometimes you get on this track. And I can tell he was just kind of going down this like slippery slope of stress. And you could tell those conversations make such a big difference, man, because I've felt the same way. And when someone just kind of takes me out of that moment and they're just like, hey, how are you? And just like genuinely asking how I'm doing, it makes such a big difference. And I can just say, yeah, you know what, overall, like I'm stressed, but I can't complain too much. And even that little self-reflection moment just helps so much.
No, it's true. Absolutely. We the involved ones, right? The involved fathers, the real men out there that provide, and it's a priority. We get it's so easy for us to kind of go autopilot, right? Like, you got to do this, you got to do this, you
Mm-hmm.
got to do this, you got to provide. The bills are coming, da, da, da. And much to what you're saying, oftentimes we might get so wrapped up with the stresses of life, and it compiles and it compounds and over and over,
Yeah,
and just that little bit of like, hey, you're not alone, from someone that you care, right? Like, again, jujitsu,
yeah,
we know that gym community, right? We know that love that you share of the mats, and especially when it's in your own home,
yeah,
right? Your own home gym. And whether you see some guy once a week, twice a week, you train with them, he's your main training partner, whatever, there's always a connection and a
yeah,
bond, right? So just
yeah,
seeing and knowing that, like, hey man, like, you're good, like, you good, and just seeing that someone that is in your life of importance and that cares and just gives you that extra second, I think for us men, it goes a long way. Because again, we don't need the grandiose, like, we don't need the big, hey,
yeah,
intervention. Sometimes just that little bit of bro, how are you doing? Like,
right,
how are you
yeah,
doing, is enough to
yeah.
kind of just shake up our world, so we don't get stuck in that autopilot and think that we're alone in this.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Just going back to like the jujitsu people, man. I can't recommend martial arts enough for people, but specifically jujitsu. It's like you meet some of the kindest, nicest, like most friendly people like on that I've ever met. And they're all like killers, right? Like everyone who
Killers, right?
trains jujitsu
Yeah.
is like it's like, geez, man. Like you have like no
Yeah.
idea unless you train, but it's like the nicest people. But I can't tell you how many like connections I've made just from that, right? Like seeing how many I talk about it, right? Like dad role models, how many great dads I've seen in jujitsu, right? Like my own professor, like he's you're probably familiar. You're in Arizona, aren't you?
Yeah. 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 I'm out
Yeah,
here in
so I trained
Tucson.
under Casino at Aries, and man, he's an animal on the mats, like multiple time world champion, just a killer. But like what I respect about him most is one, he leads by example, but like but from the dad perspective, like he's so involved with his kids, man, and he's got a million things going on. And when I see him like taking the time to take his son to like these NFL experiences and soccer games and things like that, and I see that throughout the gym. It's not just him. I feel like everyone kind of sees that as an example of like this is a guy we're choosing to to lead us. And then I start seeing some of the higher belts and the different people, and even all the way down to white belts, man. You see the dads who are they started training, or they brought their kids first. That's the amazing part. They brought their kids first to train, and then they said, well, if my kid's doing it, I should probably train too. And then they start training. But man, you see these dedicated parents that are there, and the dads that are like, I'm gonna show up, I'm gonna be there at every practice. They run their own business, or they have a big kind of like corporate career, but they're there. And those are the people I want to surround myself with, right? The ones that I'm like, they have a million things going on, but they're gonna be there for their kids, and they know it's important to their kids, so they show up.
Absolutely, and bro, it's so funny you say this. I was very fortunate. I coached. I actually coached the kids program for about a year or two at my last
Mm,
gym. And dude,
mm,
I would every time a dad would come. And first of all, the dads that would come, right? Like like you said, consistently taking the time, really investing in their kids. And I would always be like, hey
mm.
man, when are we gonna get you on the mats? When are we gonna get you on the mats? And there would be, and
Yeah,
so we would have kids class on one side, and then we would have fundamentals at the other side, right? And bro, I would
mm.
love to see nothing more than a dad who's never stepped foot on the mat drop off their kids and goes, "Hey, coach, I think I'm gonna go try a fundamental class." I'm like, "Yeah, man, you go get it.
Oh
You
yeah,
get after it."
yeah,
And sure enough,
yeah,
they got the bug, right? Because then again, it's also something for them to share with their kids. It's something for them to
yeah.
relate with them, and to me,
Mhm.
that's something beautiful. And much to what you said, man, I'm in a point in my life. I always quote Kobe, right? I always quote the great Kobe Bryant, and he says, he talks about lazy people, and he says, I don't understand them. We don't speak the same language, and I don't want anything
Yeah,
to do with them, right? And
yeah,
that's the mentality that I have towards other fathers, like other men. Like,
yeah,
if you're a bad dad, bro, like if I know that you're a bad dad, like I want nothing to do with you. I want to surround
yeah,
myself with strong, strong men that are there for their families,
yeah,
that make them a priority. That's who I want to call
yeah,
my friend. My
yeah,
friends, and I'm very fortunate that I got a good solid group of dads around me that we all have our kids. The majority of us and them train. We all get, we can all get together,
yeah,
we can all call each other. And the beautiful thing is it's all walks of life. Like you said, you got
yeah.
your corporate guy, you got your blue collar dude, you know what I mean? You got the military, the cops,
Mhm.
the border patrol agent, and we're all
Yeah,
just there together, just trying to elevate each other and become better fathers. And I feel
yeah,
like that's just so important that you have that support system even amongst us men, because it's a huge role. And when you're seeing other people doing it that you respect and you admire and you love, much like you said earlier, it's easier to want to get better.
yeah. Yeah, I love that. And man, Kobe's the man, and especially like his thought process, right? Being relentless in the pursuit of whatever you do, right? And he was one of those guys that I know when he retired, everyone was like, "Well, what's next?" And then he said, "Well, I'm starting a hedge fund." And everyone's like, "What the fuck? Like, what do you know about investing?" Right? And he's like, what does he need to know? Like the work ethic that guy
Right,
puts
man.
in when he narrows in on something, like he's gonna win, man. And
Right,
that's the type of
right,
mentality, right? Applying that, like whatever it is. A lot of people apply it to their careers, but it's such a shame when you see those people that are so successful and they don't apply that same kind of line of thinking to their family or to their kids, right? Of I'm gonna I'm gonna relentlessly pursue like excellence or pursue excellence in being a parent. And it's just like they're like, no, I'm this, like I'm a carpenter, I'm a lawyer, whatever it is, and that's what I do. But it's like when you become a dad, man, that you should apply that same line of thinking of like I'm gonna be the best fucking dad I can be. And it's a shame when you don't see that. And when you see people kind of check out and they're just like they let other people take care of their kids, and I mean we've all seen them, right? Like whether it's like friends or
right.
family, and it's just like yeah, I'm gonna do the bare minimum, and it's like, why would you want that? Would you want that for yourself? Would you want your parent to do that to you? And more than likely, they did, right? With different generations, and hopefully not. But why would you not try to be the best possible parent that you can be, best possible dad, and try to create a lot of experiences like what we were talking about, right? With jujitsu, like if whether you want to train or not, I think it's important to at least become knowledgeable in whatever your kids do, right? Gymnastics or jujitsu, soccer, whatever it is.
Right.
Don't be
Yeah,
like a
absolutely.
sideline
Absolutely.
coach, right? Yeah, you
Right,
don't have to be
right,
a
right.
sideline coach, and please don't. You can attest to this as a coach,
No.
but you know, but just know enough to nurture whatever they're doing, and to help them pursue it a little bit better, and to steer them in the right direction. Right? It's amazing going back to jujitsu. You see, one crazy example is I'm sure you're aware of her, what's her name? Helena Kravar, I think is her last name. She's a young, like,
Oh,
16-year-old that
yes. The
is
monster? The
she's a
monster?
killer,
Yeah.
yeah. Now she trains
Yeah,
with the
man.
guys at New Wave over there in Texas,
Yep.
and Gordon Ryan and Danaher and all those guys, and,
Mhm.
her story is crazy because she's been, like, killing adults since she was, like, 12 or 14, right? Just a killer,
Yeah.
and she just it's amazing because now her parents said, well, you know what, we're gonna nurture this even more, and you're gonna end up going to we're gonna move all of us to Texas, and then we're gonna be part of this massive team. Helena, man, it's crazy. Her parents just said, you know what, you want to be the best in the world, we're gonna take you to Austin, and you're gonna be the best in the world, and we're gonna surround you with the people that you need to become the best. And man, she was on a tear before, but man, look at her now. She's just crushing both the juvenile blue belt level, and then also, like, she just beat a black belt at the UFC Fight Pass last night, and it's crazy,
Mhm.
man, just amazing.
No, and that's the thing, man. Like it's so important. And you said something very, very meaningful right now about, why not put that effort and energy into your children and to becoming a better and to become the best at possible.
Mhm,
In my office, I have a team. I have a team of six, and I'm one of the
mhm,
older ones, and no one else has kids. And my colleague, he just turned 30, and he just had his first son, and he was stressing out, obviously, but he was no, yes, going back to what you were saying about being wanting to be the best dad, right? Like wanting to be the best dad for your children, and putting that energy, focus, and energy and effort into your profession, into being a parent, right? Being the best parent possible.
mhm,
A colleague of mine at work he just had his first kid, and he's asking for advice and just kind of having that conversation with them, and he was stressing out because he could either take 2 weeks of paternity leave, but it would put him not in the negative, but he knew that when he came back, he was gonna need to really buckle down and get to where he, to grind to get to where he was, or he could take like a few days right after the baby and then come right back. And he's in the
mhm.
office and everyone's kind of trying to give him advice and this and that. And again, I'm the only father there, and I turn and I look at him and I'm like, hey man, you know what you're gonna remember forever? He's like, what? I'm like, bringing home your baby boy. I was like, you know what?
Yeah,
No one's ever gonna say in your life. He's like, what? I'm like, remember that quarter two bonus in 2023? And he
yeah,
stopped and he thought about it. I'm like, bro, the stress, the work, everything's gonna be here in 2 weeks. Go hang out with your kid. And he
yeah,
was like, you're
100%.
absolutely right. And that's what he did. He ended up taking the 2 weeks off. He actually just got back this last Monday, and he came up to me. He's like, hey man, hey, thank you, because it's irreplaceable, those
Yeah,
moments, and I know it sounds cliche, very Hallmark and this and that, but it's so true. Like, you can never get those moments back, man. You can never get those
yeah,
moments back, and why not want to be there for them?
yeah, 100%, man. uh, interest, right? One thing that we want to get our daughter into is gymnastics, and Arizona is such a good place for that. I think thinking through, it's something that is good for kids. I think any sport, honestly. I'm not the biggest fan of a lot of sports. I tell everyone jokingly, but also serious, that I don't really care about any sport other than like MMA and jujitsu and any other kind of like martial art. But kids are into whatever they are into, right? And whether it's gymnastics, soccer, badminton or whatever it might be, right?
Right.
I'm going to nurture that and just help them be like the best that they can. Help my daughter be the best that she can at that sport and any future kids we have.
Absolutely. No, I say the same thing. You know, my son, he uh he um he wanted to play, I believe, baseball. It was the
Hmm.
first organized sport that he wanted to play, you know?
Hmm.
And I said, no, I'm sorry, it was hockey. Hockey was the first organized sport
Mm.
he played. And dude, seeing me on the ice, seeing me on skates is hilarious. I'm like a newborn deer out there, you know? And then his second organized sport was, oh, I want to try baseball. And I said, oh, all right, cool. And in my head, I'm like, damn, like these are the two sports that I'm not good at. You know, I don't want, don't care for. But like you said, dude, it could be underwater basket weaving. Like I'm going to support him
Yeah,
100%. You need the gear, you need the training, you need the extra coaching, you know, whatever. And then
yeah,
when he finally moved to football, I was like, all right, now this is something
yeah,
I can talk about. But no, you're absolutely right.
yeah,
For us, it's wrestling. For us, it's any form of grappling, honestly.
yeah. Hmm.
I mean, obviously, if my son came and was like, "Hey, I want to take up Taekwondo," sure, of course. But for us, it's definitely
Hmm.
grappling. You know more than anything. Grappling, jujitsu, wrestling. It's a different grind. You know,
Oh
and
yeah.
jujitsu, for example, to go somewhere and suck so bad for so
Yeah.
long before you even get an understanding of it, but just keep
Yeah.
going, keep going. That mental fortitude and that
Yeah.
grind, it translates so well, you know.
Yeah.
We're very lucky to live in an area where both multiple high schools around us have a solid wrestling program. And
Yeah. It's awesome.
it's like, and I tell my kids, I'm like, listen, I don't care if you start. I don't care if you go to state. I don't care. I just need you to know this. You know, I just need you
Yeah.
to know how to defend yourself, how to take care of yourself. You know,
Yeah.
kind of going back to what you said earlier about most jujitsu people being like the nicest people you'll ever meet. I feel
Yeah.
like a lot of that comes from the fact that we play murder, right? Like we simulate murder
Yeah.
every day. Every day,
100%.
every day we slap and bump and we go at it like you respect your partner that when you tap, they're going to stop, right? Because if you're in a deeper
Hmm.
negative, like, dude, your life is literally in their hands, you know?
Yeah.
And because we're constantly put in a place of fight or flight, but in a playful way, I
Yeah.
feel like it gives us a superpower because God forbid in the street or whatever, we can typically stay calm in situations like that because it's like, all right, man, well, if
Yeah.
you grab me, we're gonna go to the ground. And well, you don't want to do that with me, so you
Yeah.
have that extra sense of confidence. So for us, especially my two younger ones, 5 and 6, and because they're so close in age, they have each other as partners.
Yeah.
Wrestling is super huge for us just to get that good base.
Hmm.
Obviously,
Yeah.
jujitsu is a lot more technical, so I'm waiting a little bit longer for them to get into that because at the same time you don't
Yeah.
want to burn them out and you don't want them to feel like they don't understand things because like I'm a gi guy. I love gi.
Yeah.
My wife's more no gi. I definitely like gi, and even I know
Hmm.
kind of going through the steps. Okay, you get the lapel, you open it up, you this, like
Yeah.
trying to explain that to a 6-year-old is like, okay, it's a little
Yeah.
hard. So,
Yeah.
I'm waiting on that, but just as long as they're active, just as long as they're doing something, once again, I don't care if it's underwater basket weaving, basketball,
Yeah.
whatever, I'm going to be there, man.
Yeah.
And you better believe I'm going to be the loudest one in the stands, supporting them how
Yeah.
I can.
Yeah, it's awesome. Yeah, it's grappling like you mentioned, I think it's really important for self-defense like you mentioned. It it gives you the ability to walk away from a lot of situations, right? Everyone gives you that advice when you're a kid and even as an adult, right? Just walk away, just walk away. Well, it's a lot easier to walk away both mentally and physically if you know that if the conflict escalated to a physical conflict that you're perfectly fine.
Right. Right.
I tell my wife, I don't I don't think there's anyone and I say this even though I know it's not 100% true. Like I don't think there's anyone that I don't have like any kind of chance against, right? Like John
Absolutely.
Jones, of course, is gonna like demolish me, but
Right.
there's like a 0.01% chance because I train compared to like a 0% chance, right?
Right. Right.
And that's what I tell her of being able to train and having that in when I need it and I can tap into it just gives me the confidence of like, man, I don't have to worry about this. Like if I'm out with her and my daughter, like both, one, I'm armed, but like besides that, if I couldn't reach that or whatever happens right where I don't have my firearm, it's like I can protect them in a way that I know 100% I can, you know, defend them against the average person, right? Even though a big monstrous person, I can be able to like at least slow that person down. But I think a lot of people have this weird kind of idea that they'll rise to the occasion if they need to, right, in a fight. And it's like, no, it's repetition, right? Like it's not like this secret formula. It's just like go train what they teach you, and when you need it, you'll be able to execute it. That's it. Like there's no secret kind of science to it. It's like just get the work in, get the reps in. But I think it's important, especially like I think of my daughter, right? Like boys will figure it out one way or another, but for like my daughter, I think, man, like she needs this. Like I
Absolutely.
tell my wife, she's gonna train till she's like a blue belt at
Mhm.
least, right? And
Yeah,
I'd love for her to do wrestling too, because wrestling I think is a great base. I think you did it the right way, where most people do the opposite, start jujitsu and then add wrestling later. I think it should be the opposite, where teach them wrestling, and that way they get like a really good foundation. They learn stability, they learn, all these different ways. Like wrestling, you can definitely push someone off and like do grip breaks and things like that, where you won't need to fight. But jujitsu is like that nice other element where if you are in that confrontation, well, now you can finish it, right?
absolutely. No, and much to what you're saying, I feel like a lot of what gets men in trouble sometimes, or most of the time, is in a conflict, is their ego, right?
Yeah,
Their
for
ego,
sure.
their inflated ego. And if you know that, hey man, like what's the percentage of people that train? It's like 1% of that people that actually train jujitsu or grappling, right?
Probably.
It's,
Yeah,
it's it's a
probably.
very low percentage, right?
Yeah.
And I can wholeheartedly say, unless the ear looks like mine, I can
Yeah.
wholeheartedly say that if I'm going to Walmart and I have an altercation with someone in the parking lot, I can walk away from that situation with an unharmed
Mhm.
ego, if you will, because I
Yeah.
know, bro, I'm gonna take this dude back and strangle him. You know what I mean? Like I can
Yeah.
take this, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? I can take this dude to the ground. And they
Yeah.
can him and haul and this and that and blah blah blah. And I'm like,
Hmm.
you know what? You're right. And I can walk away knowing that,
Yeah.
like, bro, like I would have taken him out, you know? And again,
Yeah. Yeah.
if I'm bumping into John Jones at a Walmart, then I have something else coming for me. But the normal
Yeah.
average Joe, right? Like I know
Yeah.
hardly I can defend myself. And bro, walking around with that confidence as a child,
Yeah.
giving it to our children,
Oh yeah.
just so they know, like, hey man, I'm good. I don't need to worry. I don't need to strike
Yeah.
first. I don't need to attack first. I don't need
Hmm.
to come from a place of fear because hey, you know what? Dad taught me, hey, look, this is how you handle yourself. This is how you defend yourself.
Hmm.
And that's why on my end, I feel it's so important. For us, it's for me, it's lifting. I lift. I love to lift,
Yeah.
man. Powerlifting and your basic squat movements and this and that. I think
Hmm.
I think it's just so important, just for longevity and health and
Yeah.
once again the grind of it. And even at my kids' age, like I have them in the gym, I have them in there with me because
It's awesome.
I want them to know that like being strong is should be a priority in your life. I'm like,
Yeah.
should be a priority in your life to want to be the best physical specimen you can, right? And
Yeah.
what you're saying about people have this misconception of like, oh, I'm gonna rise to the occasion. I don't know if Tim Kennedy, he's a military guy, he has
Mhm.
programs out there, a sheepdog response, and I follow. I mean, dude, the way that I talk about like Tim Kennedy and Jocko Willink and David
Yeah. Yeah.
at the house, like my kids think that like they're an uncle that they haven't met yet. And
Same. Yeah.
and TK says, you don't rise to the occasion, you fall to your skill level.
100%.
And if
Yeah.
you're not out there, you know how it is, man. If you're not
Yeah.
if you miss 3 classes in a row, you're like, oh my god, I forgot everything. You know what I mean? You're like,
Oh
I don't remember. I don't know jujitsu anymore. I suck now.
yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
coming from a trained person. Whereas then you have someone that doesn't train at all, and they think, oh well, if I
Yeah.
have, I see red, bro.
Oh, yeah, I know. Yeah, it's funny because I just recently, like, I haven't been able to train just because our daughter's still really young, and it's like pretty demanding right now. So I'm lucky if I get one session in a week. And going back, like every time I go back after a week or two off, I'm just like, dude, do I even remember how to do this shit? And
Right,
it's like
right.
it all comes back, but it's like you don't feel as sharp, and the cardio is definitely not there. So you're like,
Yeah.
man, this is brutal. And I think through like everyone knows these guys, right, too, that like life happens or whatever, and they take a year or two off, and like they come back, and I'm like, man, it doesn't matter as long as you come back, and that's the important part. But I think to myself, I'm like, man, that must suck after like a year you haven't trained. It's like, what does that feel like? That must be brutal. And then I think even deeper, I'm like, well, imagine the people that never trained at all, or they
Oh,
trained for like a
right.
month and quit, right? We all know those people that
Hmm.
like take the trial month or whatever, and they're just like, no, I don't want to do this anymore. And just like, how do you find something like that, and you don't say, oh, I need to at least get decent at this. Like
Right.
I need to at least have an understanding. And maybe that's where the whole blue belts and blue belts dropping off, they're like, you know what, I'm ready for the world now. It happens. The rate of attrition there is incredible. But yeah, man, I think it's so important to know some of it, and you know, for kids to take some of it in, right? To incorporate into their lives. And you mentioned something about weightlifting that I think is powerful too, of not only, I think not only are you getting stronger physically, but mentally, right? Because that shit's not fun, right? Like, I
Right.
mean, it's fun to a certain extent, but most of the days you're doing it, it's not for fun. You're not like sitting there and like, oh yeah, I can't wait to get a nice pump. And it's more like, I need to do this because it's part of my routine, and it's gonna improve and it's gonna better me. But you know, I'm super sore, but I'm gonna do it anyways. But it builds mental strength too. It's not just physical.
No, absolutely. And for me, man, it's leading by example, right? And I know
Yeah.
that's the most used topic, the most used kind of phrase, but
Mhm.
that's that, I would never ask my children of anything that I'm not doing myself. Bro, like,
Yeah.
not to come off pompous, braggadocious in any way, but like I'm up at 4:45, 5 o'clock in the morning,
Mhm.
strap a 60-pound ruck to my back, I'm out the door.
Mhm.
Our garage is a gym with wrestling mats and a full weight set. I'm in there grinding, bro, before they even wake up.
Mhm.
To me, there is no bigger flex than getting after it while my kids and my wife are peacefully in bed asleep, knowing that
Yeah.
I'm doing this for me, right? In that
Mhm.
same breath, they're seeing me do it. My oldest 13, I got him into weightlifting this last summer, or I'm sorry, this
Mhm.
last year when he turned 13. I said, all right, man, hey, you're 13. And now it's man training. Now we're getting under the
Yeah.
bar. And don't get me wrong,
Yeah.
it's very lightweight. We're focusing on form and technique or whatever. And
Yeah.
in one session, it was really funny. I'm teaching him the squat, and I'm like, okay, slow, 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 slow. So I get him out of the way, and then I start my workout, right? So then he
Mhm.
starts to kind of like tease me, right? He goes, because I'm doing my, so he's like, hey, dad, slow, 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 slow. And I'm like, I have like 315 on the bar. I'm like, dude, you get 3 plates on the bar and you can squat as fast as you want, okay? And like, we're just kind of teasing each other and going back and forth.
Yeah.
And he goes, and while he was learning, because it hurts, right? Like
Yeah.
it doesn't matter how you look at it, it hurts. And
Yeah.
the bar, just the bar on his back. And he's like, Dad, it hurts my neck. I'm like, okay, well, you got to find it. That means that you're not in the right place. And then
Yeah.
again, he's there struggling. He goes, it just hurts. I'm like, but I'm like, pain or discomfort, right? Because there's a
Yeah.
difference. And
Mhm.
he's like, it's more discomfort. I'm like, I know, man. Like, how do you think I
That's
feel
what it
when
is.
that's all it is. It's like, how do you think I feel when I have that weight on the bar? Yeah, of course it hurts, but guess what? I know that after rep 4, I have one more, and I'm gonna feel so good when I come back up. And
Yeah.
just that push. And he's like, all right, cool, all right, cool. And now, now he's
Yeah.
like, now he has his little traps, he has his little shoulders, walking around without his shirt. He's like,
Nice.
and I could tell now he's liking it, right? Because
Yeah.
now he's seeing the return on investment. And
Yeah.
bro, whether it comes to lifting, whether it comes to jujitsu, grappling, that delayed gratification,
Mhm.
that return on investment that you really have to work for and grind
Mhm.
is something that is so valuable to teach children. And to me, grappling and lifting weights is probably the two best ways for you to instill that in them, where they know, like, hey,
Yeah.
like, I'm gonna do this arm curl now. I'm not gonna get a bicep now, but if I keep doing this in 3 months, I'm gonna have guns. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
like, I can't it's really hard for me to get up from the bottom. I can't get up from side
Yeah.
push. You keep at it, you keep at it, you keep at it. Next thing you know, you develop one of your favorite sleeps from there. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
and you did that. No one else did that work
Yep.
for you. No one else did that accomplishment for you. And
Yeah.
probably one of the most gratifying. I love telling the story. There's this little girl when I was training jujitsu, when I was coaching the kids, very timid, right?
Hmm.
And I remember the day that she'd done a little trial week with her family and her older brothers. They loved it. You know, they were really liking it. And you could tell she was just there because her brothers were there, right? And
Yeah.
one day she was leaving and she was crying. She was crying, you know.
Hmm.
Walked up to her and I said, "Hey, what's going on?" And she's like, I suck." And I'm like, "Hey," I go, "Hey, I suck." I'm like,
Yeah.
"It's okay." I'm like, "Just do me a favor." She's like, "What's up?" I was like, "Just keep coming back. Just please
Yeah.
keep coming back." She goes, "Okay, cool." Bro, she's snatching necks. She just
Nice.
double gold at her last
Nice.
competition, you know? And it's
I
like, and
love
it's
it.
because she put in the work, she saw that gratification, she saw that, you know, she saw the results. And you know,
Yeah.
now, hey, now she's hooked. Now we got another one. Now we got another lifer.
Yeah. Hell yeah, man! And that's so important, right? Because so many life lessons there, right? Just persevering through things that are initially so hard, that translates to every part of life, right? Where it may be difficult at the beginning, but once you get the reps in, once you get the experience, once you learn to kind of suffer through things, it's gonna help, and you're gonna get through it. There's like what's on the other side is always going to be better than what was where you were, right? Like
Right.
moving forward is always going to get you somewhere better. And man, it's awesome to hear those stories of kids that just say, you know what, I'm gonna stick by it, right? And having guidance from people like you, right? And whoever it is in their life saying, guess what, like we all started there, we all started somewhere. And it's so powerful to do things like that that humble you and take you kind of to your core of you know the person that is willing to find those moments to be humble and to learn. Those are the people that grow, right? That's how you grow as a person. That's how you grow as whatever it is professionally that you do. It's being able to say, I'm going to step away and I'm going to try something new because I know what waits on the other side is going to elevate my life. It's going to improve my life. It's going to improve my personal life, my professional life, whatever it may be. And it's great to see that starting at the kids level, right? And that's why
Absolutely.
sports, I
Yeah.
think, are so important, and martial arts especially. But that's why it's so important to pass that on to kids.
Yeah, man, absolutely. You know, and and the growth, man. It's so rewarding. Whether it's obviously your own kids or someone else that you've invested in, it's so rewarding to just see. You know, even if it's you had that much influence or whatever. You know,
Yeah,
it's awesome to see their growth, but then also take a second to celebrate yourself, right? And say like,
yeah,
hey, man, I was able to help this person in some way, this little person, you know, in some way.
yeah,
And and that's why, you know, with my kids, I want to show them that. I want to show them
yeah,
that, you know, and again, not to, you know, not to be, you know, not to be vain in any way, but I tell them like, hey, man, do you see other dads do what I do? You know, do you see
yeah,
other, you know, do you see other, and don't get me wrong, my wife is a savage in her own right. So she's out there
yeah.
getting after it too, you know? And so
Mhm.
I tell them like, hey, do you see other parents doing what me and your mom do? And they're like, no. I was like,
Yeah,
okay, hey, just we want to show you, you know, we want to show you. And they're okay, all right, you know, and it's
yeah.
easier for them because, you know, again, my wife is so awesome and my daughter looks up to her so much
Mhm.
that anything that she sees her doing, you know, she's out there doing. You know, my
Yeah,
son, you know, my 13-year-old right now, again, he's at that age where, everyone's growing, everyone's, you know, and I'm like, hey man, let me help you have that edge on your
yeah,
friends, you know, by just, you know, training you a little bit and helping you go through
yeah,
all this. And it's powerful, man. It really is powerful.
yeah. And it's teaching kids that it's okay to try to look for that edge, right? Because you're doing it in a way that's constructive. You're not trying to cheat. You're not trying
Right.
to
Right.
get ahead. It's not like you're trying to be vindictive. You're just trying to be the best version of yourself, right? And
Mhm.
whatever that is, you have to find it, right? But you have to get uncomfortable, and you have to do things that are going to push you to that next level. And you have to find people that are doing it already, right? And it's awesome you guys do it and set that example for your kids, right? Because I think parents need to consider that, right? Because there's so, you hear that so often of like, especially like first generation, right? I can relate to that, where parents would tell us, I want you to be a lawyer, I want you to be a doctor and have this like financial security. And as a kid, I was like, well, you're not a lawyer, you're not a
Right,
doctor. Like
right,
that's the first thing that came to my mind. I'm
right.
like, you want me to do something that you're not, that I haven't seen done before, and it's possible, it is 100%. And but it when you give kids a blueprint to how to do it, whether you've done it yourself or you surround them with people who have, or you get them the resources, whatever it may be, books even, whatever it is, to achieve those big dreams and goals, then that's going to be way more beneficial, and it's going to be a much better end result, I think.
No, absolutely, dude. You're absolutely, absolutely. And I feel like what's more, kind of just to piggyback off that, I never understood the notion of like, oh well, I have kids now. Like, I feel like before people would make having kids seem like okay, now their life ended or something, right?
Yeah,
Like now they can't, now they can't grow, right? Like, oh well,
yeah,
I'm a dad now. Oh well, I'm a parent now. So it is what it
yeah,
is. There goes that.
yeah,
And I'm like, dude, on the contrary, if anything, that should be all the reason for you to want to improve yourself, all the reason for
100%.
you to want to get better, because now you have someone looking up at you. And
Yeah,
what is more impactful? Again, like much like my mom, right? Like our parents, hey, mijo, this is what I want you to do. This is what I expect from you. And you're like, all right, well, how? Versus
yeah,
my mom, my dad have tried and failed at so many things,
yeah,
good or bad, that I've seen them seeking out challenges, seeking out
yeah,
discomfort, seeking out hardship in the sense that it's going to help them grow later on. That,
yeah,
okay, they're not scared of the hard work, right? They're not scared to take that
mhm,
chance. They're not scared to take that extra step. You know,
yeah,
for me, I always joke and I always say, whereas in before, much like the idea of marriage, when people, talk about marriage, it's like, oh well, now I got the ball and chain. It's like, dude, my wife elevates me. You know what I'm saying?
yeah,
My kids, I can honestly say I became a man the second I became a dad. And
yeah,
all the fathers out there, and to all the men out there that don't
mhm,
have kids, in my whole heart opinion, you don't know what it is to truly fully become yourself as a man until you have children, until you have kids. Because that's when you know, hey, that's when it's up to you to elevate, grow, and to be the
yeah,
best of yourself, like you said, for them. And that's the real challenge, is stepping up to the plate and trying to become better for them. You know, your
yeah.
your role and your journey as a man really starts the second you become a father.
Yeah, I love that, man. I think we end on that note, man. That's beautiful. I love that. I love that. Thank you, Victor, man. It's been a pleasure talking to you. And anything else you'd like to say to the dads out there? Any big lesson that you think isn't talked about?
Man, honestly, just this right here. This right here. It's so important. Find a community. Find a community of men. Find a community of fathers that are don't necessarily need to be in the same boat as you, but just in the same situation. And someone that you can go to, someone you can go to, you can have, that you can go to when you need it. And don't be afraid to fail. They're gonna see it, they're gonna love it, they're gonna appreciate it later, and they're gonna know, like, much like my only goal for my kids is they will forever know my dad got after it every day.
Oh
My
yeah.
dad got after it. And I feel like that's the most important thing I can give them. So to all the dads out there, be the best you can and get after it.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Awesome, man. Well, thank you very much. Appreciate the time, and it's been a pleasure. We have to do it again, man.
Of course, brother. Of course, man. Much love. Thank you for the opportunity, man.
Absolutely.